Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first webinar of the, summer-fall season of 2015, so to speak. I'm Jamie Machek with the Nicolay Federated Library System, and with me today is Angela Meyers with the Waukesha County Federated Library System, and Dustin Hahn with the UW Apps Brewery, and they're here to talk about the app that they launched a few months ago. And when Angela was talking about this, I kind of thought it would be a great idea for them to talk about how this all started, and I thought a lot of people would be interested in hearing that too. So Angela, whenever you are ready, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Angela, and Dustin Hahn is joining me here from UW-Milwaukee.
Hi, everybody.
So today we're going to talk to you about our project, the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten app, from concept to launch. And you're going to see a couple of themes throughout this presentation: planning, patience, persistence, and partnerships. So it all began when I was putting together the paper and pencil logs for the Road to Reading program for our 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, and I was actually doing this myself with my daughter, and I thought, boy, is this really a pain to write all of these titles and authors, and if I just had this in my pocket, I would actually record these titles. So that's kind of how the idea started, that, you know, a lot of people have smartphones, and maybe we should make an app. So I started to explore some of the options that we might be able to look into outside of apps, because I wanted to make sure that we were looking at other things. So I looked at Google Drive, and if any of you have ever used Google, it can be a little tricky because sometimes it makes you have a Google login. We looked at a website, which would be a possibility, except for who would host it and would it be on every single library's webpage. And then we also looked at a mobile app, which is kind of where I was leaning anyway. And we found that it would be customizable and it would be in the user's pocket. So the next step was really to research that. So what we did was we put out a question on PubYak, the national listserv, to ask if anybody was aware of a 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten app that might be in development. And we pretty much just heard from people saying, no, but we sure would like to have one. So they asked us to keep them in the loop if we found one or decided to develop one. So I decided to contact a former partner of mine that I'd worked with and ask him what he thought an app might cost. And I was quite shocked when we sat down and he said it would be between $8,500 and $10,000. So what do you do then? Well, you go back to the drawing board and you're like, well, do we look for a grant? Do we budget for it? Or do you just go on Facebook and spend a little time tooling around on there? And all of a sudden, I'm on Facebook and this Journal Sentinel news post shows up to say that this app Brewery out of UW-Milwaukee had started. So I clicked on the article and read about that. And I'm going to let Dustin just talk a little bit here about what the app Brewery is, since you can't see the article.
The app Brewery is actually it's a UWM innovation lab. We are funded by the School of Information Studies, and we're a part of the Department of University Relations and Communications. And what we do is we bring students into a real life situation through an internship where students can use their computer science or information studies technology background and have real-world experience developing applications for real-world clients, researchers, or UWM faculty. So that's how the app Brewery has developed. We also own and operate our own UWM mobile app. So that's kind of really the first app that we had done for the university.
Okay. So I just took the initiative and I sent a Facebook message through SOAS, the School of Information Studies, to ask if they could possibly connect me with this app Brewery. And I think within a day or so they had connected me, and the app Brewery project manager at the time called me and we kind of discussed the project, and we decided that, if we could go forward, it really would be a win-win-win scenario. The students would get the real-world experience. We would get an app that our patrons could use. And the fact that SOA sponsors the app Brewery, it would look pretty good if they also sponsored a library app. So it was a pretty sweet deal all around. So I have a little note on the side that you get in life what you have the courage to ask for. And I just wanted to say that sometimes you just have to put in the ask, and you might be surprised by what you receive. So you might be asking, well, what's involved in all of this? There was a lot of planning. So it was mostly a few of our system library staff members and the project manager at the app brewery and a few of the students that work at the app brewery. And the first thing that we did after that phone call was the app brewery developed a statement of work, which Jamie, our facilitator on this webinar, can share with you. And that statement of work was kind of a foreign document to me as a librarian. It was more something you would get from a business. And so we went over a lot of different things, but it really helped guide that brainstorming session. So we talked about what platform we might want to have the app on. We talked about COPA compliance, which is Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and really how much of the child's information can we put on the app. Parent-child relationships in the database, as parents often have more than one child. Where do we pull the books in from? So which API do we use? Is that Google? Is that library thing? Is it WhiskNet? Is it WhiskCat? I mean, it just all depends. We had to decide, where does this data live? Does it live on the person's device, or does it live in the cloud, or does it live on a server? Who is paying for what? That was the question. And we kind of lucked out because the app brewery does an occasional project without charging the client. They have some parameters for that, I'm sure, but we met the parameters. And at this brainstorming session, we kind of just sketched out what we thought our timeline might be. So we were moving right along, and now we're into kind of the late fall, early winter, and we felt like we had taken 2 steps forward. The app brewery team of the project manager and his students came out to the Waukesha office, and they showed us a mock-up of the design, and we were just like, wow, this is moving fast. This is really exciting. And so you'll see the picture of the mock-up on the screen there. So then we moved into talking about intellectual freedom, and I'm going to let Dustin talk about that, about the ownership of the app.
Yeah, so the way the university operates, and more specifically the way the UW Brewery operates, is each one of our clients owns the idea and owns the concept. So we do not, as employees or as staff members of the university, we do not own any of the intellectual property. So if anybody out there has an idea for an app that you would maybe want to talk with us about, we'll share contact information at the end. But just to know that that ownership belongs to, in the case of the 1,000 Books app, it belongs to the Waukesha County Federated Library System. It does not belong to a particular student or anyone else associated with the app brewery.
Thank you. And then we also talked about the really big question of the app developer license. Which entity obtains the developer's license? And if you're not familiar, Waukesha County Federated Library System is currently a single county system, and we are a department of Waukesha County. So we had to look to the Waukesha County IT department to find out, who should apply for those developer licenses, since the app brewery wanted us to have it in our name. So the next step was to contact the county IT department. And I was not familiar with the staff over there or kind of what the process was, so I just kind of sent an email and said, hey, we're looking into building this app and I want to apply for a developer's license. Should I put it under Waukesha County or the Federated Library System? And it pretty much raised a bunch of red flags. They started asking, what is it that you're doing? So they called us in for a meeting with the app brewery team, and they wanted us to tell them more about our project. And when they first saw the screenshot of the app that we already had in development in terms of design, they were not too pleased with us because, according to them, we had skipped a couple of steps in the planning process or to the design. So what they asked us to do is to pause and take some time to fill out a software development life cycle document, which also included writing a business case. Now again, I'm a librarian, so this was pretty foreign to me. A software development lifecycle is often used when you're developing a piece of software, and it's quite complicated. It's a 7-page Excel document asking all sorts of really difficult questions. So I worked very closely with the app brewery on helping to answer those questions because they were very technical. And I also wrote a business case, which was pretty helpful because it talked about why we felt we needed this app and who it would reach, basically. So there was some good stuff that came out of having to pause for a little bit, but it did set us back about 4 months, just because it was a lot of back and forth between the county and the app brewery and our system office. So the next thing we did was we got together with the IT department over at the county, and we set up a meeting with them to kind of go over things, and that went pretty well. And then the app brewery project manager took another job. So the project stalled again as they found a new project manager, and then I introduced myself to that project manager, who is now Dustin. And we had to start over from scratch pretty much because I needed to basically introduce the project and catch him up to speed on where we were at and what roadblocks we had been facing recently. So then I set up another meeting so that Dustin could meet the county IT people so that they could feel rest assured that we were, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. So after the county gave us the okay on the SDLC and business case, they then said that we should have the Waukesha County Corporation Council take a look at the Apple and Google developer license agreements. And so I forwarded those over, and the Google developer license is pretty brief, but the Apple one is about 25 pages. And it was suggested to us that perhaps we should issue a few suggested changes to Apple in order for us to sign off on this agreement. And we kind of came to the decision that that probably wasn't likely going to happen. So they conceded on that one, and they let us sign off on the Apple license agreement as the Waukesha County Federated Library System, and also for the Google developer license. So we moved ahead, and I was putting in for the verification of identity with Apple, and that took, I want to say, a good month for them to do a lot of their checking that they have to do. Our director had to sign off on it, and she had to approve me as the project manager on it, and they did a lot of checks on that process. So that took about a month. So if you're thinking of developing an app, make sure you build in a little extra buffer space. So once we got through the process of getting the developer's license in place, we thought we were really kind of hitting the ground running at this point, and we pulled together a focus group of librarians that work in the children's department that would be able to give us some real feedback on the app, because if they're the ones that are going to be sharing this with their patrons, I wanted to make sure that it was on target. So we got together about once per month, and we alternated between the app brewery office, which at the time was located in Waukesha, and our office in Waukesha. And we met with the member librarians, a few of the system staff, and the app brewery team. And I believe Dustin says that this was a good experience for the students because he got to, or you want to take it over?
Yeah, it was good because we have that opportunity for interactions between the students who are normally in an academic setting, and they simply are just being taught to and don't maybe miss out on that interaction that they would normally see in a professional environment. So they got to actually see the real world discussions that happen and the negotiations that happen, and to how to explain to your clients, in the case of this app, Angela and her focus group, why something can't be done and get it done within a particular period of time, but could be done over a period of time, a longer period of time. So
yeah, so it was a good experience for the students because they could see how sometimes, what you think might only take a week to accomplish or push through might take a month. So they learned to be patient, I think, with the process. So then once the students got the app into a testing place, we could start testing it on our devices. So we had the focus group along with a few other people test the app on both the Android and Apple devices, both phones and tablets, and we asked them to give us feedback. And I found this lovely picture while I was putting this presentation together that reminded me that we had a lot of red screens. So this is the kind of thing that I would send over to the app brewery and tell them which user had the problem, which device they were on, and possibly what action they were taking when the error came up. And Dustin can tell you how that is helpful.
Just knowing all of the information about the device helps us to better identify where in the code it is. So, and as this slide shows, it does take a lot of patience. Patience to understand, because in this case, our user group were librarians, and those were our clients. So we needed to help them translate, as we had to translate our code into a user-defined dialogue. We had to also translate this information that you see on the application error screen and let people know that this is in fact being fixed, or it helps us understand where the error is.
Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of testing that went on for about 4 months because we kept finding things, and then we would send it back to Dustin and his team, and then they would send out another release. And then finally, Dustin had some very good advice, and he told us that at some point we're going to have to ship the product. So to me that meant that it will never be perfect, and we should just put it in the App Store, see what people think, and then work on revising it as we go. So that's what we decided to do. So the App Brewery team submitted the app to the Apple Store and waited for them to give it okay. And the reason they went with the Apple Store first is because their review process takes a bit longer than the Android. So we wanted to kind of get that started first. But right away they sent back something to say that there was some kind of code that wasn't working quite right. So the App Brewery had to adjust that before we went ahead. So all of a sudden, almost when I was least expecting it, because this project had been going on for so long, the App Brewery pushed the app into the Google Play Store, and it went live within the day. And then the Apple Store released our app, and they sent an email that said ready for sale. So basically what you have to do is you have to log into the Apple account and tell them that it's ready to be pushed into the store. So just like that, our app was live in both the Apple and Android markets within 1 day. So that was a pretty exciting day, and I was very distracted the whole day, but we did make it through. So about a week or so later, I was at a conference, and I heard from one of our librarians that she had been testing the new app out, and they had typed in an author and then a subject, and they were having some trouble getting some results. And she had typed in what you would think is an innocent search term of rubber ducky, and it displayed some explicit content. So, to my shock and horror, I contacted Dustin at the App Brewery and said, why did this never come up in testing? And actually, this librarian was one of our folks in the focus group. So I was really sad that it was already live in the store and now this had come up. So we talked about what could we do as a solution to that.
And what we were able to do in order to make sure that the app is displaying only appropriate data is we went and we took a look at what's known as I believe it's Google's safe word list, and we implemented the safe word list in the search criteria results. So even if somebody were to put in the title Rubber Ducky and do a search on it, it would actually censor out any titles that had any of the other non-safe words or the safe words applied to it.
So I was very relieved that it was something that we could easily implement. So the App Brewery made the changes, and then they submitted a new version to the App Store. And what happens with that is users are prompted to make an update in their App Store to get the new version of the app. So I mentioned earlier that it was a bit of a surprise when all of a sudden it was in the app marketplace, and so it was kind of like, oh, what do we do now that it's live, it's out there? So Dustin had luckily been working on some training videos that we could use internally as a staff, and then he also made one that the public could view that's available on YouTube, and it just kind of walks you through the different pages of the app. I went ahead and created an app overview and frequently asked questions document for our library staff so that those that were not involved in the focus group could get a better understanding of all the ins and outs of the app, including an override that we have in the app, so that if a family had started using the program on paper and pencil, they could pick up where they had left off and start using the app. So this frequently asked questions and overview document included that override information. So that really was an internal document. And then we had the good fortune of Dustin being part of the UW-Milwaukee system, and he called on his communications department to write a professional press release for us, which also included an interview with one of the families using the apps at the Muskego Public Library, and they sent along a photographer, and they just captured some really great moments with this mother and son that were using the app together and scanning books into the app. So having that press release written and picked up by several newspapers has really helped with the publicity of this app. We also have a marketing toolkit for our library, so different graphics and things that they can use on Twitter and Facebook to help advertise the app. And of course, we have word of mouth. So hopefully the librarians at our system libraries are offering the app up to parents as they're signing up for the 1,000 Books program or when they're turning in the paper sheets from the traditional side of the program. So we have had a chance to pull the stats from the app usage, and we have 518 iOS users, so those are Apple users, and 101 Android users. And from that, we have in the actual app, when we log into the cloud storage, there are 549 registered users with 711 children actively using the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten app. And it's kind of exciting to report that there are 16,769 books that have been added to the app. And what's kind of neat about the app and the 1,000 Books program in general is that you can read the same book multiple times. So we have a feature in the app where they can tap to add the title once again. So I'm going to let Dustin talk a little bit more about the challenges and unexpected benefits.
Some of the challenges that we faced is the stop and start. That's not typically how we operate projects, but unfortunately we needed to do it. And the other thing was really capturing all of the information. As you can imagine, bringing a multitude of librarians in different scenarios and serving different patrons, everybody always has a different good idea or the next great idea for the app. But it really came down to working as collectively as a community of librarians to say what is going to be best overall and where can we negotiate how things should be rolled out and things like that. Some of the unexpected benefits is there's been a significant amount of public publicity about this app. We've actually identified people in Arizona. It's actually gone international too. There's been international inquiries. So that's something that we're actually planning for. That's a good unexpected benefit. Something that we're planning for, the app Brewery is planning for with Waukesha County Federated Library Systems to figure out how do we continue this and how do we move this forward on such a large of a stage. A lot of our students got some great feedback and really understood what it meant to work with a client. And for what it's worth, I have a 7-month-old and I actually use the app personally. So I use it when I need to and when I can for reading our information.
So I had mentioned in the beginning that there were a couple of elements that really made this all work, and planning was really key in the process of all of this. We did a lot of planning, and then we worked with a lot of different people, and it just kind of filtered in as we went along. I had never helped work on an app project before, so there was a lot of research on our end and just understanding what the process might be. Patience was really key, especially since we had to get to know a new project manager at the app Brewery. And as you can imagine, working with college students, you're working with students that may be their first semester but not second semester. So we had a constant cycle of new students working on the app, which is both exciting and a little bit difficult because they have to pick up where the last person left off, but they bring in a lot of new character to the project. Persistence was very much key, especially when we ended up going over to the county's IT department to ask them about intellectual property and also who would put their name on the app developer's license. It was unexpected that we would have to fill out that really large software development lifecycle document. And honestly, I wanted to throw in the towel at that point. But I have a very good library director, and she told me to push ahead and that we could get through it. And I'm so glad that we did, because it's really kind of a unique project, and although it was very difficult at times, it was well worth it in the end. And probably one of the best things that have come out of this project are the partnerships that we've developed with UW-Milwaukee's app Brewery and also our county IT department, because I feel like I know them better now, and I'm not just asking them for something, that we actually have a partnership. So that was really great for us. So we wanted to let you know that Waukesha County Federated Library System is interested in looking for partners. We know that there's a lot of interest statewide and across the country and in Canada, and that's really exciting for us. So we are going to be putting together kind of a plan on what that might look like to bring in other systems and other libraries. So if you are interested in partnering, please reach out to myself and let me know which library you're with, which system you're in, and how you'd like to partner with us. It will take time, just like the first iteration of the app. And it will take money because we will need to pay the app Brewery to develop the second phase of the app, and also for that increased cloud storage, because right now we're paying for what Waukesha County residents are using, but I would assume that there'd be a lot more usage if we open this up to other libraries. So we will leave you with our contact information. If you have questions about partnering, please contact me. If you have questions about developing another app, please contact Dustin. And I think if we have a few moments, we will entertain any questions.
Yes, thank you, Angela and Dustin. Angela, I just wanted to ask, as far as partnering, do you have to be a public library or public library system? What if an academic library or school library was interested?
They can contact us and we will talk.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Another question came in, and Katie asks, were any books added to the app to start, or were the titles people are reading being added to the app's database as they were reading things? Does that make sense?
There were, so it's, the app is based on what you're reading to your child. So when you start the app, you can either choose to use an override. So if you already have read, let's say 250 or 100 books to your child and have filled out the reading log, you can actually take it to your library, and there's a way that to get credit, in a sense, in the app for those books already read. And then you can actually use some of the features in the app is so you don't have to type in the title, the author, or the ISBN. You can actually use a barcode scanner and scan the ISBN barcode, and it will go out and use technology to be able to pull that information in for the title, author, and ISBN.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we are just out of time. So again, Angela and Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time to share this valuable information. And thank you for developing such an awesome app, which by the sounds of it, as you said, was quite a process, but it looks really great. So thank you again for sharing that with us. And thank you to all of you for listening in today. As I mentioned, the recording and slides and handouts will be available on our website. You'll get a link to that in your follow-up email. So thanks again to Angela and Dustin. Thank you again to all of you for listening in. Have a great day and have a great rest of your week. So long.